Howdy, folks. I'm Mac Van, storyteller and author of Creek Bottom Home. On my father's farm, I have a memory. 15 years old and carrying a .22 rifle, I was walking a dusty field road down to the creek bottom where I planned to shoot turtles in a spring-fed lake my father had lovingly made for his son. Halfway there, Spirit said, "Stop. Feel the sun's heat on your arms. Smell the sweat on your skin. Feel the breeze as it blows. And smell the green cotton growing. Smell the dust. And observe the dung beetle rolling its ball. Look at the trees in the distance, the clouds in the sky, and the blue itself." I'm not saying, continued Spirit, but someday you may no longer have what you see, so start remembering. Observe closely the bark on trees, the ferns and trillium, the banks of moss. Store the images of rocks and pebbles, and remember the sight and sound of water and leaves moving in the wind. Remember what you see, what you hear, what you feel, the people, the places, the love and purpose shared. Someday it may be gone, and later, should that be, you may want to recall. So I did. I observed. I listened. I sensed. I stored. And now, 50 years later, it is both gift and privilege to share. Thank you for listening.
You pull yourself away from the drawing and just think about the times we're in.
Right. It really is.
Only a bird hunter knows the anticipation that goes with bird hunting. Looking forward to each year's season and the seasons beyond. It's the nature of the hunter. And preparation. Preparation is everything from the size shot to shoot to the right footwear to use. Once everything has been decided, that still leaves one remaining question. One remaining very big question. The question concerning the hunter's dogs. Are they seasoned performers? Are they not only seasoned, but also exceptionally good? Or are they green? Is this their first season, their first day? In my case, I had looked forward all year to that opening Saturday at Butler's Mill. Everything seemed to be shaping up for a hunt that could be the hunt of my lifetime. The Butler Mill land belonged to the Herefords, Carpenters, Manns. A good 2,000 acres, ideally suited for quail. Imagine soybean fields bordered by fence rows, more like miniature woods than anything else. The woods lay open, 20 to 40 yards wide, perfect for shooting singles. The 2,000 acres was a patchwork of thickets, brush piles, scopes of woods, fields already harvested with corn, soybeans, and grain sorghum scattered throughout. The whole place came together as if to shout, "Hey, we got quail all over the place!" And I alone had permission to hunt. Well, maybe not, but I might as well have had. I never saw another hunter in all the times I'd hunted there before. So there I was that perfect Saturday morning with fire in my eye, grit in my craw, determined to hunt like the Dickens. And maybe just maybe, be super successful, coming home with 14, 16, dare I say it, more partridges for the frying skillet, I was ready. I did have one problem: my dogs. You see, I was still fairly new to bird hunting. I hadn't started quail hunting until comparatively late in life, around 20 or so. And the hard truth is, I didn't know what a good bird dog was. My source of frustration was Buck. Buck was a German Shorthair I had raised from a pup. Buck had an excellent nose, but a lousy attitude. It was Buck's philosophy that I could come along for the hunt if I wanted to, but he really didn't need me. Buck would find the birds, thick or thin, don't worry. Buck would find them. Then he'd flush them. Then he'd run every single out of the county. Occasionally, Buck would check back with me as if to let me know he was having a good time and hoped I was enjoying myself too. It's hard for me to believe, embarrassing to admit, but I had put up with Buck's bad habits for 5 years. I offer the following for excuses. Buck had an excellent nose. I kept hoping Buck would someday settle down and actually hold the birds he was pointing. Buck was a beautiful animal, white, with chocolate splotched all over. His eyes loving and intelligent. Buck was good with children and a fine yard pet. Hunting dog you could trust, however, Buck was not. But today was going to be different. Yes, Buck was with me, and you know how I felt about that. But today, I truly believe would be different. I was hunting a place made for birds. Bean fields, miniature woods, fence rows, thickets. I was in one of my old stomping grounds, and I pretty much knew where the birds would be. Even if Buck did run up the birds, I'd be able to see and at least shoot some singles. I was going to kill birds all right. Also, today was special. I had Deuce. Deuce was an English pointer not yet 2 years old, but Deuce was a bird dog. The first day I hunted with Deuce, I had killed the limit, and then some. Deuce was a natural, pointing, holding, and backing from the word go. Yes, sir, I was definitely gonna kill birds. Deuce was my ace in the hole. Now, who can explain why it is? When a hunter or a fisherman absolutely knows he's going to rack up, things happen that make the end result completely opposite of what was supposed to be. That morning, Deuce was a prime example. Deuce nosed up singles and flushed coveys like he was Buck's #1 student. Looking back, maybe that was my problem. Between the two of those dogs, by 10 o'clock that morning, I'd seen close to 100 birds. I'd seen coveys, I'd seen singles, and the closest I'd come to any of them was 40 yards. No good for somebody shooting number 9 shot. I don't know whether someone had told me how to break a bird dog from flushing birds or not. I just remember saying to myself, I'm not gonna have another dog who thinks it's okay to point quail, then flush them before I get there. Deuce had just done it again. Deuce was locked on a single in heavy cover 30 yards away. Deuce made a beautiful picture. As I started towards Deuce, in anticipation of my first shot at a killable quail, Deuce quietly broke point and nosed up the bird. That did it. I lowered my 16-gauge cylinder bore, aimed just over Deuce's backside, and pulled the trigger. Come to think of it, I believe I was shooting 7.5s that day, whatever. I guess I was a little too close to Deuce when I shot, because Deuce went round and round trying to bite, lick, and chew his backside. Dang! I was afraid I'd killed him. Or the same thing as, I hated that. because Deuce really was a good bird dog. Deuce deserved better. Besides, I needed Deuce to be successful in my quail hunting endeavors. Round and round Deuce went. I was trying to get to him, but before I could, Deuce straightened up and hightailed it for the truck. I sensed that was going to be it for Deuce that day. Grimly, I proceeded to hunt. I still had Buck. An hour later, things really got interesting. I was hunting along the edge of Paint Rock River. The side I was on was cut soybeans with just a narrow strip of grass between the beans and the river. On the other side were hardwoods, lespedeza patches, and thickets. I knew from earlier bird hunting trips this place was jam-packed with quail. 40 yards in front, nose to the ground, head switching sideways back and forth. Buck was working birds, his tail whipping the air like a wind-up toy. Then he stopped, and 30 of the biggest, fattest quail you'll ever see, just out of shotgun range, rose about 15 feet off the ground and leisurely sailed across the river. The birds fanned out and settled in a small lespedeza patch right on the other side. I was standing there in shock. And before I could cuss or holler, Buck traveled another 50 yards and repeated the process. Except this time, rather than stopping, Buck just ran full bore right through the middle of the covey. Another 25 to 30 quail flush to leisurely fan out and settle on top of the first covey. I couldn't believe it. Boy, I was mad. I started running towards Buck and hadn't taken 15 steps when Buck ran up the third covey. And you guessed it, the birds did just like the other two coveys. They simply lifted themselves in the air, sailed across the river, and settled in on top of the first two coveys. There they were, 3 coveys, close to 100 birds, right on the other side in a 2-acre lespedeza patch, and me already having seen 100 quail early in the day and not yet allowed to have a single decent shot. You know how I felt. Come hell or high water, I was going to get those birds. So what's any dedicated, die-hard bird hunter to do? Boils down to one thing: get to the other side. It was a warm November day. Paint Rock River moved smoothly and quietly, the sun sparkling on its waters, as if to say, "Hey, you can swim me easy." At first I wasn't sure, but it was a pleasant day. Up in the morning, the water not yet cold, and there were 3 huge coveys of quail right on the other side, sitting on top of each other, settled in a 2-acre lespedeza patch, just right for holding, flushing, and shooting singles. What happened next is why I made a solemn vow to get rid of Buck. Either shoot him or something better, like give him away to the last banker who turned me down for a loan request. The latter, in fact, is what I did. And to this day, I still get some perverse satisfaction for having done so. Swimming the river wouldn't be that big a deal. I knew I'd have to leave my coat behind, but that was okay. It was warm enough. Looking downstream, I could see Paint Rock narrowing and bending to the left. Several large boulders led from my side, going out into the river for about 10 feet. This was going to be easy. All I had to do was take off my coat and leave it on the bank. Take my shells out and throw them across, one by one. This took time because I was going to kill a lot of quail. I considered throwing my boots too and leaving my bird hunting breeches behind. I didn't do either because I couldn't throw my boots that far. Besides, bird hunting in boots and nothing else is total insanity. I wasn't that far gone. The rest would work this way. I was young, in my early 20s. All I had to do was walk out on the rocks and push off. I figured actual swimming wouldn't be necessary because I had great lungs. I'd just expand my chest with air, and the current, which ricocheted from my side to the opposite bank, would do the rest. Simple. Except Buck didn't want to go. I had hoped to have one arm free, just in case. But it was obvious Buck didn't want to go swimming at that particular spot. So I used force. Buck by his collar in my left hand, and my new 16-gauge Ithaca pump in my right, and my lungs full of air, I walked out to the furthest rock and confidently pushed off. As I suspected, it was easy. The current was readily carried me to the other side. All I had to do was stay on top, and the current would do the rest. Buck didn't like it much, but he was right with me, right by my side, swimming along nicely. He couldn't go anywhere. I had him by the collar. But no sooner had I observed that things were exactly like I thought they'd be when a problem arose. I realized I had to have at least one arm with which to swim. Without one good arm, I was going to sink. Flailing the water with a 16-gauge Ithaca pump didn't seem like a good idea. So I let go of Buck. Perfect. This was really going to be easy. Imagine my ease and confidence. Believing I could float and scissor kick across to the other side in boots and full hunting attire, I had pushed off into a river, bird dog in one hand, shotgun in the other. Now, I had the use of an arm as well. This was even easier than I had imagined. And it truly would have been easy if Buck hadn't panicked. Instead of swimming to the other side, Buck swam for the closest thing that was out of the water, my head. Buck was swimming desperately to save his life, but in the process, Buck was threatening mine. First time Buck reached me, Buck's claws hit me in my face and mouth, and under I went, cut, and swallowing more paint rock than I wanted. I came up hurt, choking, bleeding, but I was young and strong and sure of my ability to get to the other side. To turn around now in my waterlogged boots and clothes and fight the current would take more energy than I wanted to expend. So I continued. Almost halfway in the river now, when Buck approaches again. I don't blame Buck. He's just a dog, scared, and in swift water, swimming for his life. This time, Buck really does a number on me. I was tired and hurt. The second time, I didn't protect myself as well. As Buck swims to me, again Buck's claws tear my face and my mouth open, and again I swallow paint rock, this time tumbling end over end, descending ever deeper down to the Paint Rock River bottom. Hurt and tired, sick with weary, exhausted. My first wish is to quit, give up. In those moments, my life flashes by, loved ones I see, wife, children, parents, friends, even my old duck hunting buddy, Bryant, and Randy. All are smiling, as if to ask who loves who the most.